Hey, welcome everyone to our class in iyun, where we're trying to understand how the Kodesh Baruch Hu communicates to us through Torah Shebechtav, Torah Sheba'al and take a specific piece of Meitav Sedei, Meitav Karmo, specific pasuk of damage, and trace that all the way through the generations and see what information gets unpacked in each generation and what's left as Torah Sheba'al. Each generation keeps spelling out more and more of the details because we have it Katnas Adara, so the generations get weaker and things have to be written down. So it's always good to just do a recap and to think about to push everything back into the basic problem and to see where we're holding. So here's my basic diagram of karka. Of course, the Torah says you have to give meitav, and you can't give ziberis meitav. That's clear. No one argues about that. There's another pasuk that says kesev, and then it has the word yoshiv, and yoshiv comes to include shavik kesev, and not just shavik kesev, but even the worst shavik kesev called subin. So we have in our piece two Gemaras that tell us different dinim. One solves the contradiction between karka being excluding subin. You have to give the best of your karka. Give subin. One says no, subin is in, and kol shekain, you can give any type of karka, supposedly. You give subin, why not beinus and ziberis? So that was our beginning position, and we had most of the answers were predicated on the fact that karka, since the Torah meitav, is somehow a preference over everything else. That's why Abai said meitavin midiyachin alo, and we needed pesukim to bring other things in. Came along Reb Papa, and he made what I've referred to many times as a Copernican revolution, and looked out the window and saw the sun go around. The sun goes around the world, the Earth, and he, because of a certain kasha in the planet of Mars, changed the system and said, no, actually the Earth goes around the sun. So that was a tremendous. It was non-intuitive. It's not simply what we see. It's not the simple peshat of what we see. But he proved it with mathematics, which were later proven totally fallacious. But anyway, the reality is the reality, and he was correct as far as the reality is concerned, not what we see. So why do I always bring that up as an example? There's the pashtus, what your eyes see, and there's the truth that sometimes goes beyond what your eyes see. So here, everybody was presuming, Abai and Rava, even Rav Huna, that there's some sort of a defus of karka over kesev. Came along Rav Papa, and he changed our worldview. He said, actually, you have to start with kesev. Kesev is what we're talking about in Nezikin. You're not, the Torah is just talking about giving back to the nizak. That's all. And when it said give money back, it then included yoshiv to say shavik kesev and subis. That's a great way to pay back. That's all called meitav. Why is it called meitav? Because you get your money very quickly. If you won't get it here, you'll just sell it that block or in the next city. So we really started with the pasuk that said kesev is the proper payment. So then how did he now redefine the Torah when it said meitav sedehu? So he said, really, karka has a bechina, has a certain aspect where it's actually worse than kesev and shavik kesev. Why? Because of the limited amount of people who can, the buyers around, the limited amount of buyers. So because of that, the Torah did say you could use it, but only if you use the meitav part. That's snuck in. So that was the Gemara. But the question is, when the Meforshim looked into the Gemara more carefully, they wanted to know what was the hashlachot, what was the consequences of Reb Papa's statement. Did it just innocuously leave everything the same, or was there more subtle differences that will come out of his reevaluation? So the Rif and the Rush and everyone else, I mean the Rif and the Rush, I shouldn't say everyone else, they made everything equal. They said, well, really we did start with Kesef, and Yashiv came along. The Torah said you can use Kesef from Yashiv, and Kesef, of course, Yashiv means Shavit Kesef, and even Subin. So all these things, meaning Kesef to Shavit Kesef, even Subin, you can use to pay back the Nizak. What about Karka? Well, once the Torah said Meitav, and said Meitav was above the line, was in, so it became an equal alternative for the Mazik. And there it is. Everything was really totally equal. Okay. Now, other people said, wait a minute, you know, once you change the Bechina and you say that Kesef is what the Torah is concerned about, so then it's not so simple anymore that even Yashiv is equal to Kesef and Subin. The Ramah, for instance, says no, that the Yashiv now falls down a step below Subin. Kesef really is first, because Kesef is what you really want. And Yashiv is, albeit easier to get, but it's not Kesef. And then Karka, of course, will be the third most difficult to turn into cash, and that'll go down. So then the Ramah has this hierarchy. The Rambam doesn't go so far to make Kesef greater than Yashiv. He says those two things are going to remain equivalents. But he will agree that Karka never really came up to Kesef, and therefore it doesn't have the same value. What does that mean? So then we had this whole other problem of, well, who's going to decide what is an acceptable currency? Can the Nizak say, I don't want your Kesef, I don't want your Meitav, I'm sorry, or not? So that's where we're holding. We're looking at the text, but it really it seems it all starts with Rev Papa. Now, other people will say that, and like we read the Beis Yosef on the tour, that really you're right. Everything should be equal. That's really Meitav and Kesef and Karka. Everything should be equal. But there's another element here that you didn't think about, which is called Baal Chov. And in Baal Chov, we learn a principle that when you owe someone money, you always have to pay him in metaltalin before you pay him in Meitav. So that was the excitement that we were doing last week. We'll look into it again to refresh our memories, but that's really what's happening. Actually, so we have a Gemara in front of us. There's what the Gemara says, what the Gemara means, and that's a big problem. You can learn the Gemara simply and not change any of our simplistic view of life, or you could say there's other Gemaras that are going to now interface with this Gemara of Reb Papa and start changing the relative strength of the Kesef and the Shavit Kesef and the Meitav. So that's what's going on here. That's where people are thinking about. They're thinking about these three elements and what are the relationship of these three elements: the Kesef, the Shavit Kesef, and the Meitav. And of course, we have to bring proofs to what we say, and there's going to be a certain area where the proofs are going to rely on Svara. Do we import information from Baal Chov into Zikon or not? Well, that's going to be a Svara. We have no Gemara that says it. We don't have any Gemara that doesn't say it. And we read that the Beis Yosef says, well, if there was a difference, it should have been said. So other people say, well, obviously there's a difference. It didn't have to be said. So this is the intrigue. This is where we're at now, at the level of first the Rishonim, and now that's going to spill over into our Gemara. Yeah, but that's generally what we're really talking about is the again, everything really just goes back to those Pesukim and what Peshat in those Pesukim were. But it becomes a more complicated issue when we explain the Pesukim with a certain Bechina like Reb Papa did, making Kesef the real element, and then that's going to have consequences. Some people will say no consequences at all, like the Rush, just every Meitav is totally equal, and other people say no, Meitav now is going to fall below in preference, and then that's going to be the excitement of where we're going. Okay, so I'd just like to do that in order to keep us involved and to realize that we're not doing anything except the two Pesukim. I mean, that's really what we're doing, but we're becoming more educated as to what that Pasuk means and what the ramifications of that is. Okay, so we had the tour. And the tour, well, first we'll read the Rambam just because his language is similar to the Torah. Not exactly, but is similar. And some people will say it is the Torah, some people say it's not the Torah. But the Rambam says when the Beis Din is niskaken, ligvos, ha-nezik, minichasei ha-mazik, so go and melton techila. That's the big chiddush of the Rambam, that the Beis Din collects for the nizak from metaltalin before karka. Okay. The only one of the Rishonim that we said something like that was the Ramah. If he doesn't have metaltalin enough, so then we go to his karka. Very good. That's what the Rambam says. Now the Tur, in his Tur Shulchan Aruch, in his Tur, what does he say? Keshabayin lahagvot lenizak nisko. Changes the Rambam's language a little. The Rambam says Kesha Beis Din niskaken, and he says Kesha Bayim ligvos. He doesn't talk about the Beis Din. Whether that's a quick paraphrase or whether that's significant, people are going to make hay out of that. But again, he says Rowan im yesh lamazik metaltalin. The first thing you do is see if the mazik has metaltalin. If he does, then you don't go down to sell his field. But the mazik gives metaltalin. Okay, so that's a very important phrase that we're all going to be involved in the next level of depth. The next thing that the Torah does is tell us about Kesef, the missing element in the Rambam. The Rambam did not say one word about Kesef. So if he is referring to the Rambam, so you'll say the Torah is completing the scene. If not, he's just completing the other element. And he says, even if you have Kesef, then you can give Subin, because Kol Mili Meitav Hu, which is Reb Papa's statement. So the fact that Kesef and Subin are equal, we learned from Yashiv, and he explains Peshat and Reb Papa, right, that they're so equal that they're called good. And then he gives us halacha of shaman, which we had in the Rush. Okay. In Talmud and you go down to the karka. So that was the tour. Now the big problem is, what did the tour mean? What did the tour mean? So we read the Beis Yosef. And the Beis Yosef, the key point here that we have to focus on is that there's going to be some case where metaltalin has a precedent over karka. So that's the case we have to produce. We have to produce where is the case where metaltalin has a precedent, because the Rambam just said it, and over here the Torah just said it. So the question is, where is that case? So the Beis Yosef says a chiddush, that the Torah is telling us that when the mazik wants to give karka and the nizak wants metaltalin, the nizak has a right to claim metaltalin over the wishes of the mazik. So that's the case that the Torah is talking about. The mazik wants to give him karka, and the nizak wants to demand metaltalin. And the chiddush of the Torah, according to the Beis Yosef, is that we force the mazik to give metaltalin. That's hard in the language of the Torah, got it? But that's what he says. So I just put the words in here again. When the nezik nisko rowan im yesh lamazik metaltalin ein yordan lenichnasav limkom basav lefi haratzon shel hamazik. We don't say that the ronim lamazik metaltalin ve'ein yordan lenichnasav limkor kachasav lefi haratzon shel hamazik. Yes, the mazik, that's the chiddush here, that we're talking about the mazik wants to give him karka, and we say, no, we don't let you sell your karka and give it to the nizak. Elda, what do we do to the mazik? That we force the mazik to yiten the metaltalin according to the ratzon of the nizak. Okay, that's how he learns Peshat. So that's the case where the metaltalin has precedence over karka. Okay, normally thought it would be the same thing, but it's not true. The nizak can do it. Now, the Beis Yosef scratches his head and he says, okay, where do we see such a... We only saw Reb Papa made everything equal. So he then appeals to what the Rosh said about Balchov. Okay, when the creditor wants to collect, so he can demand metaltalin over the debtor's desire to give karka. So the Beis Yosef says that case, which we learned in Malva, where the creditor has that ability to demand karka over metaltalin over karka, is what the Torah was writing about. He does not talk about the Rambam at all here. He blames it, or he attributes it to the Torah. He's only talking on the Torah. He says the Torah learned this din that the nizak has a right to say, that the mazik has, that the nizak, has a right to say, give me your metaltalin, I don't want your karka. From the case of Malva, we can say, give me your metaltalin, I don't want your karka. Fine. And he, of course, admits the fact that the Rosh himself was very clear that that's a special din in Malva. It has nothing to do with Nezikin. Because in the case of the Malva gave money. He has a right to demand money back. That has nothing to do with Nezikin. But he says, since that's the Torah's position, and since the Gemara didn't make such a chiluk between the two cases, and it should have, so that is the din in the Torah. Okay, up to here.
Yep, that was a good review.
Okay, good. That's what happened. Okay, now adds the Beis Yosef that what did the Torah mean of a fil sheish lo kesef yochel l'shalom b'subin? Why to call me who? He says that's the halakha Papa. That really we're holding like Reb Papa, but when it came to in other words, that kesef and metaltalin are equal. But karka is the one that's the odd man out. If the mazik wants to give karka here, then the nizak can reject it. But if the nizak says no, it's metaltalin, so the mazik can give kesef metaltalin. That was never a problem. The only problem is karka. The nizak could say, I don't want your karka, just like the malva can say, I don't want your karka, because we have a precedent there in Balchov, and Nezikin is just a Balchov. I just owe you money. I don't owe you the thing. After all, if I damaged a cow, I'm going to pay you back with meitav karka. It has nothing to do with the cow. Or I'll pay you back with little coins. So we're just talking about a balchov, the the base Yosef will claim the Torah is saying, and therefore you have the sin of a balchov. That's what the Torah did. Fine?
Yep.
Good. Okay. Now we skip down to what we did last week, which was the Bach. The Bach comes and argues with the Beit Yosef and Peshat in the Torah. And he says very respectfully, Rabbi Yosef Kara, you missed the point completely. Your Chiddush is totally out of place. The Rush, as you admitted, never said that there's any preference in Nazikin of metaltalin over karka. He never said it. He said that was in Balchov, and therefore there's no connection. And the Torah never meant it to be a connection. So how did he read the Torah? The standard way we always read. Okay? The standard way we always read. How did he read it? And so I wrote in the words here. Keshabayim lahagvon, this here's the Torah. Keshabayim lahagvon lenizak nisko ronim yesh lamazik metaltalin. You see the mazik has metaltalin, then ein yordan lenichasav limkor karkasav lefi haratzon shel hanizak. It's the nizak that wants the karka here. And we don't listen to him. He can scream and yell meitav sadeu all day long, but we know that the mazik has a right to give metaltalin. So metaltalin is an equal alternative of the mazik to give it back. And if he has kesef, he can give subin, because subin is equal to metaltalin. So that's our old picture, really, of Rev Papa, where everything is equal. Forget about your importation of the svara from Balchov, and that's Peshat in the Torah, and you totally misrepresented the Torah by reading him that way and by introducing something that was not shaykh at all. Okay, that's what the Bach says. Okay, so we'll just look at the Bach a little more carefully here. Okay, he first near in the Rav Lamad lives so kach mehu the Reb Papa. Reb Papa, as we always knew him. We had a problem, Meitav Sadeu, in Midio, and Yoshiv Rabbi Shavikav Skil Suvin, and the Gemara concluded, like Papa, that call Mile Meitavhu. That means all metaltalin is Meitav. The Lo Mizdavan Leduchta Chrisa. Levad Mi Karka, the Leslay Meitav. Karka is not called Meitav, in essence, because of the number of purchases around. But the Torah said we'll lower the standard a little, and we'll say because Meitav, the excitement can bring it up a little, so we'll allow you to give Meitav karka. Okay, Levad mi ar delay slave Meitav ki hechidikov solei hazrine. Alma, says the Bach, we see that metaltalin is even better Meitav than karka. So there's no if the nizak yells all day long, Meitav, 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 from Agamar of Reb Papa, we see metaltalin is even better than metaltalin. Who said the opposite? Remember Rev Huna over there, he said the opposite. He said that karka is better than metaltalin, and therefore we force the mazik to give karka, if that's what the nizak wants. And only if he doesn't have it is he allowed to give metaltalin. But we are not holding like, we're holding like Reb Papa. And Reb Papa said that the revolution here of Reb Papa was to say that metaltalin is even better than karka. And it was Meitav that was brought up. I mean, karka was brought up by Meitav to make it either equivalent or a little lower, as we're going to see. Okay, but that's an important point, says the Bach, that the Torah has to explain, because there was a revolution here in Rav Papa, and we know, Rabbeinu Tam holds like Rav Huna, and that really he can give karka over metaltalin, and the Torah has to tell us no dice. Don't think metaltalin is any less. We've changed that whole svara, and metaltalin is actually better than meitav karka, so he can give it. Okay, and that's the Bach, and that's how he understood the Torah, which is really saying, if I can use my analogy of Copernicus, that the world is as it was. The sun rises and goes around the world, and this little problem you had with Mars, we can solve by showing you epicircles or something. But really, everything is really Reb Papa. So there's nothing to worry about, and there's no new revolution coming in here telling us that Meitav somehow, Metalton somehow is better than Meitav. It's not. Excuse me, that the Nizak somehow can demand Metalton over Karka. It's not true. All the Torah is trying to tell you is that the Nizak can't demand Karka over Metalton, which was the Chiddush of Reb Papa. Okay, and he says it clearly. Look, Ana Yavina Lacha Kedin Chava Meitav. I'm giving you Meitav, which is Metalton. Doesn't look like Meitav, it's only Subin, but it's called Meitav because you can get money back. So that was what the Bach said. He continued, Elohim, Ein Lo Metalton, of course you have to give him Idis. Okay. But if the Mazik desires to give Karka, and that Nizak wants Metalton, which is the case that the Beis Yosef said the Torah was talking about, we don't. The Nizak can't force anybody to do anything. He must accept it as Karka. Okay? And that case, he explains, whereas the Beis Yosef says that's the case we're talking about, the Torah says we're not talking about that case, we're talking about the simple, the Nizak wants Karka and the Masek wants Metalton. Okay, that was it. And he says, of course, everything I wrote is not like the Beis Yosef, and who learned differently than I'm learning. Oh, but this is very important. And he says the Mazik has Yad Al-Yona, like the Rav HaMagid in Reish Perech Halach of Chova and Perech Ches in Niskei Mammon. He wants to bring a raya to himself, very interesting, from the Maggid Mishnah, who talks on the Rambam of all places. Okay, so it looks like, we'll look at that right now. It looks as if he's now going to explain the Rambam according to the Maggid Mishnah, which is also that we're talking about a case where the Mazik wants to give Metalton, and the Nizak yells Meitav, 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 and Allah is not like that. Okay, that's what we did more or less last week. We can look a little here at the Maggid Mishnah. I'll copy out the digital text. I have him here. Okay. Oh, it's the Tosfos. Where's my? Oh, gee. The Maggid Mishnah is not here. The Maggid Mishnah is here. He's a region on the Rambam. Okay, go down to the end here. And Maggid Mishnah. Yosef. Just get the Maggid Mishnah up in here. Nicely, I probably did somewhere. Where's the middle parents? Let's do this. 1 second. This is the Rishon. It should be here. I should have had him open. Okay, just bear with me here. Where is he? So much stuff here. Can't find him. Where did I put him? There he is. Okay, here's the Maggid Mishnah on the Rambam. Now this is very important because the Rambam is very pivotal. He's the one that came up with the statement that there's a preference of Metalton over Karka. He was the one that really started the Torah can claim, I'm only following the Rambam. Okay, if that's what he's doing. He's not saying that according to, but that's what the Beis Yosef is presuming. But here's the Rambam himself. What does he say here? Hacholu b'chavro chayav l'shalom lo chamesh devarim ve'elohem. A person, this is Perek HaChovel, if a person damages another person, he has to pay 5 things. Nezik, tsar, ripui, shevus, and boshus, right? And he says, v'chamesh devarim elu, these 5 things, kulan mishtalmi afi b'nechasav. All these things are paid with the best of his property. Kedin kol mazikin. That's what he says. So he doesn't say the word meitav sedehu here exactly. He says the words yafi b'nechasav, the best of his property. So let's see what the Maggid Mishnah says here. Can you read this? It's a pretty, I have gotten a bit of text, but this is the one they had on Hebrew books. It says, so he's, you go ahead, read. Can you read it? If you can read it. So
that's a quote from the Rambam.
Pirush.
She'im ba hagavoso karka, if he's going to collect from him karka, noisein loi min hayafa. He has to give him from the yafa. Magbala min metaltalin afilu subin meitavhu. That word I can't make.
Okay. Velokhan.
Velokhan be'in a terif. Velokhan, he has to take it be'in a terif karka. He can't grab karka. Commotion is bar paraches nehalchas niskei mammon. Vadin mevur reish perek kamed bavakama de amar kulan ka'avesim l'shalom meitav.
Okay, that just means that meitav. We have to look at that also, but I mean that's kula ka'avos mishalom and meitav. That just tells us that all the different types of nazikin, remember, tachnasin nisham kesev, are all in the din of this meitav business. So that really is not the main point here, but the main point here is that the Maggid Mishnah is telling us that the mazik can pay with yafi shemin chasav, which means the best of his field. Aval keshohu, though when he pays from metal subin meitavu. He adds that words into the Rambam. The Rambam didn't talk about, in this particular case, did not talk about metaltalin, right? So really the Maggid Mishnah explained that this din of meitav is only if you give land, but if you give metaltalin, you can give it equally. No hint. And that's how he understands the Rambam himself. The Rambam is just saying that the pasuk means meitav sedeu is the best of your property. What's called the best of your property? Well, of course, the best of your land, but also metaltalin is called the best of your property because imlo nizdab and hach nizam and misachrisa. So he takes this Rambam, which looks like a gigantic revolution, giving no, not here. I shouldn't say that. Here it's not such a revolution because here the Rambam is quoting more or less the Pasukim, but he's not telling you what the Pasuk means. So the Maggid Mishnah is filling it out. He says the Rambam, of course, the best of your property is meitav sedehu, but it also equally means, I mean, that's only a din of land, but we know that Rav Papa said when it comes to metaltalin, you can give everything.
So basically what he's saying is that the Rambam, although the Rambam says the words min hayafa sheben chasav, he's saying the word Shabbat Chasav is lav dafka, or you could say that the Rambam specifically chose the word Shabbat Chasav because you have to explain that the Chasav is either metaltalin, which every metaltalin is yafa, or if it's karka, you have to go and select the yafa Shabbat karka.
It's very, yeah, it's very interesting where he stops Divrei Maskil. Mishtala min hayafa. He didn't quote these words from the Chasav, right? Right. What's called yafa?
Yeah, min hayafa. Yirish im balag v'asek karka nesami explains.
Right.
So he doesn't say the word nechasa. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm just saying because to him yafa, nechasam is a word sort of is a minor theme. It's in the background. You know, the most important thing is yof, whatever's yafeh. What's yafeh? So when it comes to land, which is also your property, so you have to give the best. And when it comes to shavikesa, which is also your property, although it's not land, but it's called neches. See, what does neches mean? Land, or does it mean, metaltalin also? So he wants to say no. It's a generic word. This word nechasa, which means your property in a large sense, not in a specific sense of karka. Okay, so now what's so nice is everything really is up front. But I mean, no one's hiding any sources, but you have to, you have to read them. So let's see what he says here. There's also a Maggid Mishnah here, but I don't know. There's a Rambam. This is Hilchos Geneva, but it's just interesting. In Geneva, I just found this in Geneva. What does he say in Geneva? Because a Ganav is one of the 24 Nezikim. Right? Interesting, correct? What does he say?
It has a din that first he needs to pay from metaltalin, and then if he doesn't have that, then we go to his karka and we must take the yafish of karka like other nezikim.
It seems pretty clear here that the Rambam, in the case of Ganav, says first you go to metaltalin, right? And only when he doesn't have metaltalin do you go to the land. Okay?
Right.
Okay, now, very interesting. Maggid Mishnah doesn't talk about our little aspect, but there's another Maggid Mishnah here. I just thought that was, the Rambam the difficulty with the Rambam is not difficulty, but the real Rambam is he's one whole unit. He's one person with a vast knowledge, and he writes it and compresses it all down into a new book called Mishnah Torah. So you really have to understand him in his own language. Like we learned in Der Tfunos, every mechaber has a certain style, certain way they use language, and you have to understand the style of each one. So the Rambam has a certain style. He doesn't talk about kesef anywhere that I found in the Rambam when it comes to Nezikin at all. He talks about this metaltalin, and he keeps calling it, and then he talks about yafi shemina chasav. So those words we have to define. What does he mean? So that's the. But here is the other Maggid Mishnah that the Bible quoted. Okay, and this is the language. Do I have the other? Well, we'll start here. I think we have to go to the next. Let's just read it here.
Which one? Hey?
Yud.
Yud in the Maggid Mishnah.
No, Yud in the Rambam first.
Oh, no.
Did you see it?
Yeah, no, okay. I wasn't able to see it.
Yeah, I was probably flipping around.
So it sounds like very similar to the Torah, right?
Yeah, very similar to the Torah.
First you collect metaltalin, but if he doesn't have metaltalin at all, or he doesn't have enough metaltalin to pay for the entire damage, then you collect hashar min hakarka. In other words, what he's saying is you would mix it up. You would give him metaltalin for the amount of metaltalin that he has, and the balance, he would give him a karka ha'ma'ula. Now he doesn't
because exactly. He doesn't call it yaf. He changes the language, you see. He writes that's what he does. You have to understand. He knows what the Torah says, and he has his own language, and you have to understand those definitions. But clearly here he seems to be saying that the din is the mazik that you go to the mazik, and you have to claim metaltalin from him, right? And only when he doesn't have metaltalin, or not enough of metaltalin, then you go to the karka.
Right.
Seems that's the din. I mean, if I asked you just really simply, that's what seems to be saying. That there's a precedent of giving metaltalin over karka. Nothing to do with the Nizak ones, nothing with the Mazik ones. It's simply, that's the din. What do you want? That's the din and base din. Okay, that's our piece. Okay, and there is here. Oh, wow. Where is it? Here's the Maggid Mishnah. I'm flying up and down here.
Yeah, I don't see it flying up and down so fast.
Yeah, no, it takes time to, to communicate, to get to you.
It's refreshed.
Yeah, refresh, yeah. I'm trying to stop the, is it calmed down yet, or it's still jumping up and down?
Yeah, I see. Because Bezdin is kakin. Mevor parakama.
Yeah, Daf Yud Daled. Al Piske the Shavik Kesev. Now, that's why I was going down. I thought I had the second page there. I probably have it somewhere, but I'm supposed to be right after it. My mistake, probably. Oh, there it is, there. The end of the Maggid Mishnah. Here it is. It says, so he says, this din of the, let's get the Shivas here. I mean, the Divrei Mal. I'm sorry, I'm going back and forth here. But, here, Kesha based in Niskakin, he says, Mavur Baperik. Now, these are very important words, Kesha based in Niskakin, right? Because the Torah didn't say these words, and the Rambam did. So this is a very subtle point that people are going to again debate. But the Maggid Mishnah says that based in Niskakin, that comes from Daf Yud Daled, Besugya al Piska de Kesef. Over there, they talk about Kesef and Shavik Kesef. We have to do that Gemara. Okay, it's a very critical Gemara. Okay, because there they're going to talk about Ayashiv again, and they're going to talk about Karka again. Okay, but as far as the base din, he pushes us over. This Lashon of Rambam comes from Daf Yud Daled. V'chein lamala ba'oso perek ahead machlokas amarai. Right? There's a Amarayan.
By Pasek or Pasak Rabbeinu, Pasak Rabbeinu Akra Papa, Rabbeinu Ben Yeshua.
And he's V'chein dasa hilchas. Okay, Hilchas Gedolos. Yeah, that's. I think it was like a Gaonim. I tried to find the save. I'm sure it's around there. I just it wasn't. I couldn't find it in Hebrew books very quickly, but it's important because they're trying to get ammunition. Again, the Ramchal says that your statement is true only if you have proof. So the best thing to do is have someone who said it. If not, then you have to show through an inference or that it's true, or the worst thing in the Ramchal's language is svara, because svaras are not as crystal clear as black and white. They're very, very powerful, and sometimes that's what we have to do. Anyway, this is the Maggid Mishnah. So the way that the Bach learns the Maggid Mishnah in the Rambam is that there's an equality here. Even though the words of the Rambam seem to be giving a precedent of Metatal clearly over Karka, he's going to push in this whole idea again that the Mazik is claiming Karka, and the only thing the Rambam is telling us is that he doesn't have to give it. You understand what's happening here? There's one, you read the simple thing in front of you, the simple case, the sun is going around the world, and now they're making this an akimta and talking about it as if, wait a minute, we're in Beis Din now, and the Mazik is, Nizak is demanding Karka, and the Rambam is, and the Nizak and Mazik wants to give him a Metaltal, and the Rambam's saying, nah, you give him a Metaltal, just like the Mazik wants. Okay, so this is a very dochek reading in the Rambam. Okay, but that's what's happening here. I mean, you can't get away from it. So to say this in the Torah is a little easier because the language of the Torah, first of all, we can presume that he's following the Rush, and second of all, the language can hold that, and it's the Beis Yosef's language that's a little bit strange in the Torah. In Rambam, it's much harder to say, but they're going to now do it on the basis of those words based in. This is called his based in, going to start telling us. And really, what does the judge do when in such a case? Now, wouldn't it be nice, like everyone says, if the Rambam would have spelled that out? But he speaks briefly, and again, they'll tell you this was all in his concept package when he compacted these few words and wrote them down. Okay, but this is what we're going to get into. All right, but that was all just to see these last two lines of the of the Bach. Where was it? He says it's not like the. Oops, why here? Sorry, I went too far down. I went to the Shulchan Aruch too fast. Okay. That's what he says. So here's the end of the Bach we just read. It's not, the Peshat in the Torah is not like the Beis Yosef, but it means, just like I said, the Mazik is yelling, the Nizak is yelling Meitiv Karka, and the Nizak wants to give him a Tatalin, and all the Torah is saying is that look from a Tatalin first, and you don't listen to the, you kiss from the Tatalin, I'm sorry, and not from the Karka. And he brings what we just saw in the Maggid Mishnah, Rosh Perek Kebel and Perek Chesed Miskei Mammon, which is this thing we just saw about the Maggid Mishnah is on the Rambam, so he's now putting the Rambam in the picture here and saying even the Rambam doesn't hold what you say, and I can prove it because of what the Maggid Mishnah says. So that's what we accomplished, or what the Bach accomplished. Okay. Now, let's read the Drisha. The Drisha also is going to agree with the Bach and attack the Beis Yosef. So the floor is yours. And all these people we said lived at the same time in Poland.
What?
They all lived at the same time in Poland, just about the same time. They're all Polish. It's very interesting that the tour was accepted, but I read recently that 3/4 of the Jews lived in the Polish area, in there, and also a little Latvia. But that area, before Rahmanistan, Holocaust, that was the central area for the Jews. Jews had pretty good life sometimes. Okay, there was always, like we'll see, the Shah was chased by the Chomenki, I think it was called, barbarians. But the Polish prince, whatever, invited Jews in and gave us a good time there, and Judaism flourished throughout Poland for many, many centuries. My family goes back to Lumja. Through some strange consequence, my family goes back to I have a tree that goes back to 1730 in Lumja, of all places, a little town. My uncle redid the Beit Kvarot there, and for that they went into the archives and they gave him a family tree. So Poland was a very, very central center of Yiddishkeit for centuries. Okay, so and all these people, even on the Shulchan Aruch, they're all Polish. They're all I mean, they're Jews, but they from Poland. Anyway, here's the Drisha. Okay, this is my gray. You can forget about that. So. Ayin Bach, Shevi. Okay, we just read. Yeah. So
saying that the psukim are not a stira, because with metalpelin, when we pay metalpelin, we pay subin, and sadais we give meitav. So that's why it's not a stira.
Right, and it seems equally. I think he's saying it's equally. Like he's saying, like what Rashi's inferring, with metalpelin you give a filu subin, and with sados you give meitav. It's they're on the same level. There's, what I mean? That's what I think he wants from Rashi. They just to say they're both equal. It just so happens when you're talking about Shavik Kesef, you can give even Subin, because that's all Meitab. When Sodas, you have to give the Meitab. But, don't say any precedent one over the other. Okay.
Meshuv Garsin Daf Tes. But Meshuv Garsin, my kid just walked up.
Okay.
Meshuv Garsin and Daf Tes. Rav Huna Amar Oikes of Meitav. That would Gairis, that Rav Huna says Oikes of Meitav. He left like Yashal Afilu Subin. Ben Yachalam Al Mazik Trach Umachar Va'aisi Lizuzi.
So it's true that really Meitav, Kesef and Meitav is first and Subin is only second. But you can't force the mazik to sell the subin. Okay, what he wants from this, I'm not sure, except maybe he wants to show that the nizak never has any power in this say. According to Reb Papa, he definitely doesn't have any power. He's just meitav karka or subin, like Rashi said. And even Rev Huna doesn't give the nizak any power. I mean, to tell him to go get Kesef or something like that. That's what I think he wants there, but I'm not sure. But I don't know why he brings in Rav Huna here, but that's one possibility. If you can think something else, you're welcome to. Anyway, because of a toes, the harash, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Children, Baruch Hashem, are acting up.
I'm
I know. You have to take care of the little one. Okay. So I think from this second line here, we're going to see why he brought both Rav Papa and Rav Huna, just to say that the Rif Pesachs like and the Rush, and the Tosfos and the Rush clearly say that the Rif holds like Rav Papa. So if you had any doubt about the halacha, he's bringing to you right here, just in case you don't remember the Gemara after studying it as much as we've done it. Okay.
Okay, I'm back.
Very good. I think we'll see now why what both Rav Papa and Rav Huna in this line. V'katvu hatosfos v'harash.
Because of Tais Rush. 1 second again.
Okay. Because Tosfos v'harash b'shem harif. The halacha garapaba, the swarle metalton made of mikre. Says when the Tosfos brings the Rif, and when the Rush brings the Rif, they both agree that the Rif is holding like Rapapa, that metalton is called meitav. No problem. The Rush and the go ahead.
Okay, I'm back.
Very good.
Again, because the Tais Rush b'shem harif, the halacha kara papa, the sfira the metaltally meta mikri. So the Tais Rush by b'shem harif, that the halacha is like Rav Papa.
Right. So they both the Tosfos and the Rif, when they quote, both the Tosfos and the Rush, when they quote the Rif, they clearly say that the Rif is holding, whether I don't know, the Rif himself says it, but they say really that the Rif is holding like Rav Papa and not like Rav Huna. Okay, that's probably maybe why he brought Rav Huna before. Okay, now he says Vaita.
The Dayak Harash, the Afilu, is like Kesef, Karka, Harishus Biyadai, Litenlai, Afilu Subin. The Rush writes that even if he has Karka or Kesef or Karka, it's up to the Mazik to give even Subin.
Okay, so you see very, very clearly that this nothing to do with Rav Huna. Rav Huna would not say that, but the Rush clearly says that as Kesef or Karka, there's no problem with giving a Subin. How does he know that? That there's no priority, no Nizak can force Karka or Metalton or anything. I mean, the Masik just gives what he wants. How does he prove that? Go ahead.
It says, as we saw, it says V'hamesi Alai, without V'hamesi Alai, I would have thought that the nevela belongs to the mazik.
Right? Because you want the pasuk, the people over there were saying a Mesilo comes to tell me that the nevela is to the nizak. Right? So it must mean if I didn't have a Mesilo, who would get it? Who would get the nevela? The mazik. No, that can't be. Right? Yeah.
Right. If he had his own. So he would be able to give it, Subin, nevela didei mibai. Do we need to say that the nevela belongs to the
Nizak? Right. Why do I need the pasuk v'amesi yelo to tell me Nizak goes to the Nizak, that the male goes to the Nizak? It obviously goes to the Nizak. Because even if the mazik gets it, Yoshev tells us that the mazik can give his own nevelas back to the Nizak. So certainly he can give the Nizak's nevela back to him. Right? So he says the pasuk of v'amesi, yeah.
Right, so what did he just say? Navisol the Rav Huna, lem the Isra Krad, the Isra Kesef, I made that. Ella.
1 second. V'i issa the Rav Huna, and if the halacha really was like Rav Huna, the Gemara should have answered Rav Kahana and said, Lema the Itztari Kro, the Islay Kesev, O Meitav. It's true if the mazik had all three, he could give the nizak back the nevela that he got from the nizak, right? So we wouldn't need v'amesi alo. But what happens if the mazik had kesev and karka and the halacha was like Rav Huna? So then he couldn't give he couldn't give the metaltalin back, right? He couldn't give the karka back. So you would think that the mazik has to accept the nevela, right? Comes along the pasuk in that case for Mesielo to say no, the mazik can even nevela back in that case, right? That's what the Gemara should have attacked Rev Kahane. He said, what do you mean we don't need v'hamesielot that says that nevela is to the nizak? Sure we do, because the halacha is like Rev Huna, and if he has kesef and karka, he can't give his own nevelas, and he can't give the nevela back of yashiv. He can't give the nevela back of the nizak because yashiv doesn't apply. So the chiddush of v'hamesielot definitely tells me in that case that the nizak gets the nevela, right? Because normally I would say the mazik has to keep it, right? So that's a raya, says the Rush, a beautiful raya that the halacha can't be like Rav Huna, because the Gemara would have answered it. Obviously, he would have said, what are you talking about? We need v'mesi alo when the mazik has kesef or meitav. There he can't give the karka back of the nizak. He can't give his own karkas back, and the Torah had to machadesh that the nizak keeps the karka, right? So the Gemara never answered that. Never answered Rav Kana that way. So it must mean that they held that there is no preference of meitav and kesef over metaltalin. Right? And they're all equal. Beautiful raya of the Rush. That was his raya that the halacha is like Reb Papa, and that also the mazik can give anything he wants. Okay? That's what he says. That's what the Drisha brings to us, to our attention. Okay? So according to it's clear that the mazik can give what he wants, because once you say the mazik can't give what he wants, i.e. say he can't give metaltalin, then you'll end up with a kasha with that Gemara.
Right.
So you see right away now the other people who have to now jump in and defend the Beis Yosef against this attack. Okay, but that's what happens. Okay, all right, Visham. So anyway, he just brought a riot of the Rush that everything is equal. Okay?
Right. Like he's saying, because he started off saying, the halacha k'rapab is meitav mikri.
Exactly.
Okay.
And exactly, meitav mikre, and it's not less in any way. That was Reb Huna. We don't hold like Reb Huna. I'll show you the Gemara doesn't hold like Reb Huna from this case of Reb Papa. And don't tell me any of these stories that there's any precedent anywhere of metaltalin, of karka over metaltalin, like you want to say. You want to say when the mazik wants to give karka, the nizak can yell out, no, I want metaltalin. That's what the Beis Yosef said. He said, get out of here. The mazik can give what he wants. If the mazik wants to give metaltalin, he can give it. If the karka, he can give it. Anyway, let's go back to Visham.
V'sham l'fnei zakasav harash kol shmuto alav l'praya bein nizikin bein l'mal chayiv perei lefi datai v'loi lefi dat hagoyva. The Rosh writes before this that anything that one has an obligation to pay, whether it's damages or bal chayiv, he pays according to his own desire to pay, and not according to the desire of the one who is being paid.
Right.
So it's always up to the payor, not to the payee.
Clear as a bell. Exactly. Both in Nezikin and both in Balchov. He says even Balchov, which is a Chiddush, but he says it. He says clearly, right? Both in Nezikin and Balchov, the one who's collecting the money back, Goveya, has nothing to say about anything. So look at this, it's very important because the rush here took Balchov and pushed it in the other direction. You see, right? We thought Balchov, the other people wanted to bring Balchov, there's a raya that the debtor, that the Malva can say, no, I want metaltalin over karka. He says nothing doing. Whoever's paying back has a right, exactly, to pay back equally with all three. And he says it, kagon. Oops, I'm just going to move that up a little so we can see it. Yeah.
For example, if he has many, many fields which are all idis, so why did you have to give that as an example? In other words, even though the payee may say, I want the karka on the north side because that's closer to my field, the payor could say, nothing doing. That's idis. The one on the south side is idis. I'm giving you the one on the south side, and that's it. And he has to take it.
Okay, now he just says halacha here. He just says that's the facts. Okay, again, we don't know all the background why he came to that conclusion, but he definitely says that's the conclusion, that the poreya, the guy who's paying back, is the guy who's in charge completely. Okay? And even when it came to two different pieces of, but that really, the reason why he says that, because that's really what the Torah said. Later on, I think we have to read the Torah back again. The Torah, and later on, he said that the mazik can decide north or south, right? Which one? The nizak has no power over there. Okay, but it's no proof to anything. It's another example of where the nizak has no say and all the cards in the hands of the mazik.
Right.
Okay. V'chein.
Yep. V'chein yamar nizak tenli beinanus. V'mazik amer einei roitzaki him chavivim alai. Ein kaifin oiser lite. It sounds like it's going to be giving him something better than beinanus in that case.
Yeah. Yeah, so he wants to give his idis, right?
Right. So we're fine. We don't force the mazik to pay with beinus. We let the mazik give the idis if that's what he wants.
Exactly. To Sham. What is he saying here? Remember, we had this. Go ahead.
Right.
Go ahead. Yeah, please.
So we said that we do not give preference to the payee as to which karka he gets. Right? If he wants to give him this idis or that idis, that's the one the mazik gives, and the nizak can't say he has a preference.
Okay. Now remember the Gemara said knocked out Abaya. It's a long time ago, but the Gemara knocked out Abaya's whole peshat of the mazik when it comes to beinanus doesn't have to pay. In other words, if the nizak wants beinanus, he has to pay at the higher price. That's what Abaya said. So the Gemara said, wait a minute, your Horace Kocho Shel of the Nizak, and the Torah says Meitav Sedehu. Okay, in
Right.
other words, that was the knockout of Abaya. So here it looks also, if we don't let the Nizak be involved as the rush, maybe you'll think this is against the rule of, against the spirit of the Torah, what the Torah says. The Torah wants to give the Nizak power. That's why he's getting Meitav, you know. And here, if you're going to say that he all of a sudden you're limiting his power by saying, no, the Mazik has all the power to give what he wants, even if from two different idices, and you know. So maybe you'll say that. So he says, no, that's not called Horos Kochot Tvei Minaihu Desham Shalo Yochel Litchos Mi'idis Al Idis. This case of where the Nizak wants Baininus and the Mazik wants to give Idis is not, and we said the Mazik has the cards, is not called hurting the Nizak, because it's just like the case where the Mazik wants to give Idis B and not Idis A, and we say the Nizak is out. He's making an analogy. So we're not really knocking down the Nizak. This is somehow a power that he was never given. Just like he can't decide which Idis, he can't decide which he can't demand vainness over Idis. This is all very subtle stuff because, you know, that was this whole problem there with how Abaya was learning when he knocked out Abaya. Okay. But let's leave that. Okay. But the point is the point. And that here, and here's the Drisha, I put it in red because here's his conclusion. Oh, no, here's the brush. I'm sorry, because it says Ayin Sham. The Rush concludes.
You can give whatever he wants as long as he doesn't give less than the receiver is entitled to.
I.e., Baininus or Zebras. As long as he... Okay, that's one place, remember?
Right.
Okay, where he can't, the Mazik can't say, well, my property is going to be going up in the springtime, so you take that springtime property. That's he doesn't have the power to do that. Okay, Ad Kan Lashono. That's the end of the Rush. And now here where the Drisha picks up.
Right. Hello?
Yeah, the screen is jarred. Yeah, pick it up. Vinilmad?
Vinilmad. Nimashkosov the Habrera biyad hamazik. So it comes out that its choice is up to the mazik. The imyeshloi biyad, the imyesh biyad kesef by idis, or just biyad litzim like shava kesef afilus tubin. Nimashkosov rationale.
Right. So Nimad, I just added the word Tur. So this is where the Tur got his din from the Rush. Just like the Rush said that if you have kesef or idis, you can give subin equally. There's no precedent. So that's where the Rush. That's where the Tur got his din. Okay.
Yeah. Mishum the gam who nikor meitav.
That means metaltalin.
And because metaltalin is also called meitav, and the rishus is up to the mazik to give which other meitav he wants, that's why he give even metaltalin.
Exactly. Umine, and from this we can also derive.
Again, it's up to the mazik to give which form of payments he wants, as long as it's not worse than what the nizik is entitled to receive.
Exactly. Vaf.
Sheharash kosav be leiva umalva. Shal bishagam hal leiva data mishalim.
Mikol Malcolm. Yeah, it's actually.
Even though it's up to the leiva to pay, however he wants. And right to malva metalplin had din ima. So malva wants metalplin, he has a right to request metalplin. So that's a preference. So he's saying
yes.
He's the only one that has a preference.
Exactly.
Malva with metalplin and nobody else has a preference.
Right. Shani Malva. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, that's good. I'm sorry. Emo. Whoops. yeah, Kamosha Kasu Bereish Simin Kuf Aleph. That's the Tur. The Tur writes that the Malva has that right. The Malva does have a right to say, I want you metaltalin. Okay, but that's only a localized din in Malva, has nothing to do with Nazikin, right? As he's going to say.
Right.
Continue. Shani Malva.
Shani Malva.
The Hilva lo Kesef.
Hilva lo Kesef.
Mishum Hachi.
Dinai lachatchila kesef ayadaimelei dahainu shava kesef. Mashen kein nizik shadina lachatchila afilus zuben kesef yedis.
V'kal lavin, he says. Okay, so basically, look what he said. He said the Beis Yosef is, out to lunch over there. I mean, the Rush said this specifically. There's only one place that the person who is collecting has any power, and that's in Lova and Malva. That's what the Rush says. And he said clearly has nothing to do with Nazikin. And it was a fatal error of the Beis Yosef to push this in. I mean, even the Beis Yosef admitted that the Rush said it, but he tried to defend the Tur in his own word by saying, well, since the Gemara didn't make any distinction about it, so the Tur felt that was correct, even though the Rush didn't say it. So it looks pretty bad for the Beis Yosef over here. I mean, he also admitted that there was this only in Malva, and he said that the Tur was the one that decided that the Malva was equal to the Nizak, and therefore he gave the power to the Nizak to demand metaltalin over karka. That's what he says. Okay?
Yep.
Okay. And now he concludes.
The thing I was here in order to keep from the base of Rabbeinu. Vani Omer sheme'olam le'olsa al das Rabbeinu le. What is that word? Lahavasan bazeh.
Yeah, I think it means to give any. I hope that's not a. I think it means lahavaya. Never, it didn't have any life, being. We should have to check inside the text whether that's correct. But that's if it is correct, it means that it was never to the das of Rebbe the Tur to conceive of such a thing, to make any, from the word from Hoveh, I think. Okay. Okay, so that was a spelling out of the stira that the stira to the Beis Yosef. Okay, we just the Rush said it specifically in Balch. If you look at the Rush himself, so the Rush clearly only said that in Balchov. He said there's special reason over there, and everything else is equal. And the presumption here is that the Tur is following his father, the Rush, right?
Right.
And therefore, he's clearly talking, just saying that the Loba has no power to yell the pasuk Meitav Meitav Meitav, and we go down to the metaltalin Techila. Okay, and no mention of the Rambam here. Okay, so this is pure. The way I see it, this is purely saying that the Tur is following the Rush, and that's his halacha, and just like we learned in the Bach. Okay, so do we have a little more time?
I think I'm going to stop here.
Okay, let's stop. Next up at bat next time is going to be the Lavush, and he's going to defend the Beis Yosef.
Okay.
Okay, so to give you, I should send you the chart. I really worked on it. Let me show you this. What it starts with. It starts looking like this.
Wow.
We're going to have the Sma and the Bach fighting the Beis Yosef, Peshat Natur. The Ir Shushan is going to defend the Beis Yosef. This is how the Bach is going to knock out the Beis Yosef. This is how the Shach is going to knock out the Beis. The Bach is going to knock out the Beis Yosef this way. Okay, this is how he knocks it out. The Sma also knocks out the Beis Yosef. Then comes along Shach. He's going to knock out the Sma and defend the Beis Yosef, and then he's going to knock out the Bach, and he's going to defend the Beis Yosef. So it's going to be exciting. Oh, and then he's going to either he's also going to reinterpret the Maggid Mishnah. So all the proofs that we just brought that looks like the Beis Yosef is on the ropes, the Shach is going to, the mighty Shach is going to come in, and with a swift glance of his sword is going to remove all the rayas that everybody brought before him. It's pretty exciting. Okay, but again, once you understand, that's it. I always tell people it's all 2 and 2 is 4. It may get a little complex, but really no one is saying anything more than 2 and 2 is 4. If there's not 2 and 2, in other words, they're very clear what they're saying. It just so happens that they're very deep. So you have to hold head. Imagine the Shach saying that you're over in 20 minutes. So, okay, the Vilna Gaon is sitting in the audience. He can get it easily. But without all his background, it's very, very hard to know what's going on. But once you're in it, so then you can understand what's going on, with the help of the roadmap. Okay, have a great day. We'll see you next week.
Very good.
We'll see you next week. Call to. Goodbye.